Your boys and my boys.
The blood-sucking Brady Bunch.
I still want you, Lucy.
I didn't invite you this time, Max.
The Lost Boys wasn't just a vampire movie, it was a warning. It made the boardwalk feel like a trap, and eternal youth look like a curse wrapped in leather. But behind the scenes, nothing came easy. The script started as a kid's film. The vampire eyes looked incredible until they started burning through the cast. And the soundtrack? It outsold the movie and built a cult of its own. These are 20 weird facts about the Lost Boys. And buried deep in the fog, 2 teen idols who bonded on set and never recovered from the fame that followed. Keep your eyes on the sky. The hunt has already begun. Number 1. It didn't start with fangs, or fog, or half-naked saxophone solos. The Lost Boys was originally written as a kid's adventure, a vampire version of The Goonies. The main characters were 11 or 12. No motorcycles, no blood, no seduction, just flashlights, treehouses, and good versus evil in the safest sense. Even the vampires were different. Old, wrinkled, more Nosferatu than nightclub. Richard Donner, the director of The Goonies, was supposed to make it, but when he stepped away to focus on Lethal Weapon, the project stalled until Joel Schumacher walked in. He read the script, flipped a few pages, and said one thing: "I'll do it, but I want it sexy, scary, and adult." He aged the kids into teenagers, tossed out the kiddie humor, added danger, sex, and a slick gothic edge. Schumacher didn't just revise the tone, he detonated it. Suddenly, the boardwalk wasn't about innocence. It was about temptation, about power, hunger, identity. The studio said yes, and the movie grew up, fast. The sweet coming-of-age tale? It was gone. What rose in its place was something darker, something cooler, and something that would change vampire movies forever. Number 2. It's one of the coolest things in the movie. Vampires soaring through the night, stalking their prey from the sky. But here's the twist. You never actually see them fly. No wings, no bodies, just the camera gliding forward like a predator. And that wasn't style, that was survival. The production couldn't afford full flying effects. No wire rigs, no creature shots, no polished visuals that would sell the illusion. So they rewrote the problem. They saved the big money flight scenes for the finale. And for everything leading up to it, they let the camera become the monster. Suddenly, what you didn't see was scarier than what you did. The POV glides, the wind, the sudden lift from the ground. It all felt primal, and it cost almost nothing. What started as a cheap workaround became one of the most iconic signatures of the film. Because in The Lost Boys, sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's coming at you, it's what you can't see coming. Number 3. He wasn't cast to lead the movie. He didn't have the most lines, and compared to the rest of the cast, his role was small. But Kiefer Sutherland didn't need a lot of screen time. He just needed one look. From the first moment he appeared, spiked hair, leather trench, that icy stare, everything shifted. He didn't play David like a monster. He played him like a rock star. Quiet, controlled, lethal. The director noticed, so did the editors. More screen time, more close-ups, a stronger ending. By the time the film wrapped, David was the face on the posters, and Sutherland had become an icon without ever raising his voice.
Yes, first, you don't like rice? How could a billion Chinese people be wrong? Come on. How are those maggots? Maggots, Michael. You're eating maggots. How do they taste?
Number 4. He turned it down the first time he read it. Too messy, too weird, too teen-driven. Jason Patric wanted serious roles, not vampire hair gel and fog machines. Schumacher pushed back. He told Patric that the movie wasn't about monsters. It was about transformation, about identity, seduction, control, family. It worked. Patric said yes, but even on set, he wasn't sure if the movie would work. He since said he didn't understand the film until he saw it with an audience and heard the screams and the laughter and the applause. The thing he almost walked away from? It became the first cult hit he was ever proud to be part of. Number 5. They didn't build a set. They filmed on location. Santa Cruz's real boardwalk at night. The crowds weren't extras. They were locals, drifters, runaways. And more than once, things got dangerous. Crew members were warned to watch their wallets. Fights broke out between takes, and some of the people in the background weren't just acting sketchy, they were sketchy. The line between fantasy and reality blurred fast, because while the vampires were fictional, the chaos surrounding them was very real. Number 6. It doesn't look like much. Just a kid in a tub, listening to music, relaxing, before Michael comes crashing in. But that scene nearly sent Corey Haim to the hospital. The water was cold. The house had no heat. They filmed late into the night, take after take, and Haim, wet, shivering, and sitting still, started showing real signs of hypothermia. The crew had to stop filming and pull him out. He couldn't stop shaking. They wrapped the scene in towels and space heaters, and it made the cut. The moment looked simple, but behind it was a teenager barely hanging on. Number 7. He didn't tell anyone. Not at first. Kiefer Sutherland broke his arm in a motorcycle accident shortly before filming started. But rather than risk losing the part, he hid it. He showed up, cast and all, ready to shoot. The crew adjusted. He wore long sleeves. The camera avoided wide shots. Every scene was carefully blocked so he could move, gesture, even fight, without revealing the injury. The studio didn't know, the audience never noticed. And David, the most controlled character in the movie, was played by an actor one wrong move away from serious pain. Number 8. He didn't audition. He wasn't even acting full-time. Billy Wirth was playing in a nightclub when Joel Schumacher spotted him. Not on stage, but in the crowd. Schumacher saw the look, the presence, the energy that didn't need dialogue to land. Wirth wasn't trained, but he was magnetic. And for Schumacher, that was enough. He cast him as Dwayne, one of David's gang, based almost entirely on vibe. No backstory, barely any lines, just that face, that hair, that glare. It wasn't about acting chops, it was about building a visual myth. And Wirth delivered, no words required. Number 9. The movie had sequels, but the comics? They had secrets. In the 2000s, the Lost Boys universe was revived on the page, not as a reboot, but as a direct continuation. Michael came back, so did Sam, and the Frog Brothers were still fighting the undead. But something had shifted. The comics weren't just follow-ups, they were weird, more brutal, more surreal, and more obsessed with the twisted mythology behind Santa Carla. And then, they gave the Sax Man a backstory. He wasn't just a sweaty music god with a chain around his neck. He had a name, the Believer. Part prophet, part performer. A symbol of the chaos nobody ever explained in the movie. The sequels kept the brand alive, but the comics, they cracked open the tomb and let something older crawl out. Number 10. He's shirtless, soaked in sweat, pumping his hips while wailing on a sax under purple lights. He appears on screen for seconds, but no one forgets him. His name is Tim Capello. He was Tina Turner's touring saxophonist, a bodybuilder, a showman, and in The Lost Boys, he became a legend. That performance wasn't staged. That's how he actually played, oil and chains included. Years later, fans still show up to his concerts dressed like him. They quote his lines. They share his gifs. They know every note. He wasn't a vampire, but he still stole the scene and never gave it back. Number 11. They weren't supposed to be funny, or cool, or even particularly good at their job. The Frog Brothers were written as awkward teenage vampire hunters, but Corey Feldman had other ideas. He showed up to rehearsal with a voice 2 octaves lower, wore camouflage, and told Joel Schumacher he was channeling Rambo and Chuck Norris. Schumacher didn't say no. He said, "Go further." So Feldman and co-star Jameson Newlander leaned all the way in. They watched action movies, practiced grimacing, spoke in gravel. They turned clumsy comic relief into full-blown parody tough guys. And it worked. Because in a town full of real monsters, sometimes the best defense is 2 kids trying way too hard. Number 12. The city didn't want its name on a vampire movie. The Lost Boys was shot on location in Santa Cruz, known for its boardwalk, its beaches, and its history. Just 10 years earlier, the city had been the site of multiple serial killings, and its image was still recovering. When the studio told city officials they wanted to feature Santa Cruz by name, with murder, fog, and flying vampires, the answer was a hard no. So they renamed it Santa Carla. They even built the murder capital of the world sign just outside town. Locals weren't thrilled, but the sign stayed in the film. And now, for horror fans everywhere, Santa Carla is just as real as Santa Cruz ever was. Number 13. It's the quietest moment in the whole movie. No blood, No stunts, no music, just Grandpa walking to the fridge. The family is still stunned. The vampires are gone. The house is wrecked. And then, without looking up, he says it.
One thing about living in Santa Carla I never could stomach. All the damn vampires.
Laughter, silence, roll credits. The studio hated it. Said it undercut the emotion. Said it was too dry, too strange. Not enough boom for the ending. But Schumacher fought back, because for him, that line was the ending. The exhale after all the madness. The moment that said, "The world's always been this weird. You're just now catching up." He won the battle. The line stayed. And it became iconic. Quoted for decades. Printed on posters. Whispered in Halloween houses. Because in a movie full of creatures hiding in plain sight, it turns out Grandpa wasn't just the punchline. He was the warning no one listened to. Number 14. The movie did well, but the soundtrack, it outlived the movie. Released in 1987 alongside the film, the Lost Boys soundtrack became an instant cult artifact. A hypnotic mix of rock, goth, and synth that tapped into something deeper than dialogue. Cry Little Sister wasn't just a theme, it was a mood. Dark, yearning, almost spiritual. The album sold millions. It outperformed the box office. And while the film found its cult audience over time, the music hit right away. Years passed. VHS tapes faded. Posters peeled. But the soundtrack kept playing. In clubs, on vinyl reissues, in Halloween mixes, and horror fan playlists around the world. Even now, DJs sample it, bands cover it, and fans know every lyric like scripture. Some films leave behind a look. The Lost Boys left behind a sound, and it's still echoing through the dark.
Are you all right?
It's not cheese, it's garlic.
But you hate garlic, don't you?
No, I like garlic.
Guys, you like garlic. Here, quick, drink some water. Whoa! What's the matter with you? Does it burn?
Burn? What are you, nuts? It's freezing.
Number 15. They were hypnotic on screen. Glowing, alien, almost animal. But those vampire eyes, they were brutal to wear. This was the 1980s, when special effects makeup was raw and comfort wasn't part of the budget. The lenses weren't soft or breathable like today's. They were made of glass, thick, rigid, hand-painted. They dried out the actor's eyes within minutes. You couldn't blink, you couldn't focus, you just had to survive the shot. Kiefer Sutherland said the pain got so bad they filmed his close-ups in short bursts, then tore the lenses out before his eyes dried shut. If blood hit the lens, it stuck. If dust got under it, it cut. So if the vampires look intense on camera, it's not just acting. Behind every glowing stare was an actor straining not to scream. Number 16. In a different version of The Lost Boys, it might have been funny. Too funny. Before the cast was locked, a wave of young comedic actors auditioned for key roles, including Ben Stiller and Jim Carrey. Carrey read for the role of David. Stiller was considered for the Frog Brothers. Both were strong. Both were rising stars. But they leaned funny, not dangerous. Joel Schumacher passed. He didn't want camp. He wanted myth. Cool, dark, and seductive. Not sketch comedy in leather jackets. The studio didn't argue. The tone held. And The Lost Boys became what it was meant to be. Not a comedy with vampires, but a vampire movie with bite. Number 17. When The Lost Boys hit theaters, not everyone was impressed. Some critics called it shallow. Others called it style over substance. A few didn't get the mix of horror, humor, and teen melodrama at all. The reviews were mixed at best. But something happened. The VHS release exploded. Fans kept watching, and rewatching, and quoting. By the time the 90s rolled in, The Lost Boys had gone from cult curiosity to cornerstone. The critics came around, slowly, but the fans never left. Because some movies don't need to win awards. They just need to stick to your ribs. Number 18. They didn't know it yet, but The Lost Boys would change both their lives, and not always for the better. Corey Haim and Corey Feldman met as teenagers on set, nervous, untested, trying to act cool under the lights. The bond came fast. Long nights, shared pressure, the strange comfort of knowing someone else was just as overwhelmed. They became inseparable, in scenes, in interviews, in real life. And the industry saw opportunity. The two Coreys were born, not just a duo, a brand. More roles came. more money, more expectations. But no one warned them what fame does when it arrives too fast and stays too long. The pressure cracked Haim early. The addiction followed. Feldman tried to hold on, but the friendship buckled under the weight. They drifted, then lost each other. By the time they reconnected, the damage had already carved its scars. When Haim died in 2010, Feldman called it the hardest goodbye he's ever faced. Not just a friend, a part of himself. Because the Lost Boys gave them their start, but it also gave them something they could never outrun. Number 19. He didn't do press. Didn't go to fan screenings. Barely talked about the Lost Boys for decades. Jason Patric thought of it as that vampire movie. A fun gig maybe, but not a serious piece of work. And for years, he kept his distance. But over time, the legacy grew. The fans kept showing up. The energy didn't fade. And eventually, he changed his mind. Patrick now calls it a film that matters. He's spoken at anniversary events, embraced the character, even reflected on how wrong he was. Sometimes you don't see the impact until long after the credits roll. And for Patrick, it took years to realize. He'd been part of something that never really died. Number 20. For Joel Schumacher, this wasn't just a job. He fought to direct it, fought to reshape the script, fought for the cast, the tone, the music, the fog. He poured his style into every frame and never apologized for it. But critics never gave him much credit. For years, The Lost Boys was dismissed as a stylish fluke, a pulpy teen flick with no weight. Schumacher disagreed. He called it one of his most personal films and stood by it until the end of his life. He said it was about family, belonging, power, desire, and how easy it is to get lost in the dark. The fangs were real, but the heart? That was his. Bonus fact. The title wasn't just clever, it was a shadow. The Lost Boys came from Peter Pan, the wild, reckless kids who never grow up. But in Santa Carla, staying young comes with teeth. Schumacher twisted the fairy tale. No Neverland, no innocence, just bloodlust in leather jackets, frozen in time. And originally, the ending went even darker. No grandpa at the fridge, no punchline. Instead, Lucy buries Max in silence. Michael watches the sky like it's still hungry. And Santa Carla? It doesn't feel saved. It feels haunted. The scene was pulled. Too slow, too sad, too real. The studio cut it, but the message stayed buried in the title. Because in this story, never growing up doesn't lead to magic. It leads to blood. The Lost Boys never followed the rules. It wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. And nothing about it was safe. But that's why it stuck. That's why it still pulses. Through fog, synth, and vampire sweat. Nearly 40 years later, it gave us the two Corys. It gave us Santa Carla. It gave us a saxophone solo we're still not over. But most of all, it gave us a reminder that eternal youth comes at a price.